especially in the early days of Solana, it just mattered more to iterate quickly and get stuff out and ship fast
Sure.
than to solve for like finding every last thing. And so that was like the intentional approach towards the way we advance the network. Now, over time, as Solana has grown, they're now sort of just like existing large businesses, hundreds of millions of dollars of trading volume, enterprises using Solana. We've had like a sort of philosophical cultural shift.
This episode is brought to you by Uphold, which is one of the top crypto platforms in the industry. I've been a user of Uphold since 2018. They make it easy to buy, sell, and trade crypto. They have 300 plus cryptocurrencies on their platform, which includes Bitcoin and all the top altcoins. And folks, they do not commingle. They do not lend out your funds. They are 100% reserved, and you can review their transparency report. And they have a lot of great features that make it easy to execute your trades. They also have a great new product called USD interest accounts, which allows you to park your dry powder or your crypto profits and earn up to 4.9% APY. Now, the 4.9% APY is only on balances over $1,000. Below 1,000, it's 2%. But what's great about this product, guys, is there's no lockups, there's no monthly fees, there's no subscriptions, and best of all, it is FDIC insured just like a bank. So if you'd like to learn more about Uphold, visit the link in the description. Welcome into the Thinking Crypto podcast. I'm your host, Tony Edward, and with me is Kuleen Nimkar, who handles growth at the Solana Foundation. Kuleen, great to have you on the podcast.
Hey, man. Thank you for having me. It's good to be here. I'm excited for this.
Yeah, Kuleen, as we were talking about before the recording, I'm really happy I met you last week at Mainnet and saw you and some of the other folks in Solana discuss all the cool things you're working on. And Solana seems to be doing a lot, so I have a lot of questions for you. But before we get to that, tell us about yourself, where you're from, and what's your professional background.
Yeah. Where I'm from is sort of a long story. I actually grew up in Singapore and then in San Francisco Bay Area. Studied applied math, worked in finance for a while, doing consulting, and then I worked in quantitative trading, and then sort of joined the Solana world. And I've been part of the Solana team now for about 3.5 years. And so it's been quite the journey. I mean, most things on Solana that exist today did not exist when I first joined. And so it's been awesome to see the progress in the ecosystem.
What was your first encounter with crypto? Was it Bitcoin, ETH, or Solana? And what was your aha moment?
Yeah. So my aha moment is actually a very specific thing. I somehow stumbled into a Medium article back when people still use Medium, written by 2-Bit Idiot, now I think more known as the Ryan Selkis. He wrote a piece around why Bitcoin could be a reserve asset for the world. This was in 2015. I remember reading that piece and I was like, that was the aha moment for me it makes sense that we should have a form of money that's potentially not tied to a single government, that is sort of this like neutral currency that the world can use. And so that's when I was like, okay, like Bitcoin to me makes sense. I then had a sort of like a follow-up aha moment, which was really around smart contracts and decentralized finance. And that was when I was using, and this is Peanut, who also I guess wants to say hi, is my dog, the benefits of a dog-friendly office. In any case, the second aha moment was really using Ethereum-based DeFi in like 2018, 2019, things like Aave, which was back then called ETHLend, Uniswap in the early days. And because I was working in quantitative finance, like that, I saw some of the parallels of like what was being built in DeFi and the elegance of having this sort of financial rail that just uses the internet you can access through a browser. But even then, I thought that Ethereum, this just feels too clunky. And I was looking for like, where do I think this can actually get built? Like a really robust financial system. That's what led me to Solana. And here we are.
And what do you do at Solana?
I do a bunch of growth stuff, but notably I lead our efforts in a few verticals. this would include DePin, AI stuff, games, and what we call the creator economy. So it's a quite a diverse mix of things. And so I really feel lucky to do what I get to do. It's like a endlessly intellectually interesting job.
Hmm. Now, for those who may not know about Solana, and obviously that's probably not many people, but I'm thinking about the newbies and people who are going to discover crypto over the next 12 months, right? As the bull market heats up. Give an overview of Solana and what's its mission.
Yeah, so Solana is a layer one blockchain smart contract platform, and Solana is really built to be as performant as possible, sort of as fast as the laws of physics will permit. Like that's really the goal here is like how do you make a decentralized system that's just incredibly performant, while keeping some sufficient level of security and censorship resistance.
Hmm.
But so like insofar as we respect the laws of physics and we maintain some important level of censorship resistance and decentralization, we just want to be as fast, cheap, scalable as possible. So that's really what Solana is at like a fundamental level.
And from a use case standpoint, is Solana looking to target maybe retail use cases or enterprise or both?
Yeah, it's really meant to do it all. Like in some ways, the way I think about Solana is um, it's really a fundamentally sort of financial piece of infrastructure that can enable an incredibly wide range of applications, some of them consumer, some of them enterprise. Um, and we actually sort of, as the Solana Foundation team, try not to have a very prescriptive view of like what should or should not get built.
Hmm.
The way I actually think about Solana is, it's sort of this digital city state that we're trying to create. And what we want, like sort of my dream for Solana is that this digital city state has the talent, the sort of human capital and the financial capital of New York City with the infrastructure quality of a Tokyo or Singapore.
Hmm.
That's really the goal here. But like, what are the kinds of businesses that exist in this digital city state? I think that's really for the market to decide. Like, what do people want? What do the residents want?
Hmm.
Um, we really see our mission as making sure the infrastructure is incredible, that the talent and financial capital exists, and then everything else, let the sort of market sort it out.
Yeah, for sure. Are you surprised by Solana's growth? And obviously, you head up growth, so kudos to you. But the adoption, the rise in developers, transactions. There's a ton of metrics and stats, of course. But how are you and your team looking back at this, kind of explosive growth?
Are we surprised by it? I mean, yes and no. It's sort of interesting to go if you think through the journey that Solana's been, especially since say at the start of 2023, which was, yeah, I think, admittedly a pretty dark time for Solana, just post FTX. Um, a lot of people were claiming Solana was dead. Uh, and we knew, right? Like I think sort of we being the Solana team, but also the people who were building on it, that hey, fundamentally nothing had changed about Solana. It was still like an amazing piece of technology. There's still some really, really talented people building amazing stuff. Like none of that had changed, even with FTX collapsing. So
Mhm.
fundamentally, Solana should still be alive. That said, perception matters in crypto, and I think the perception on Solana, many people thought was like quite grim. Um, but like fast forward to where we are today, like Solana is now sort of one of the very few, I think, extremely well-known sort of rarefied crypto projects. And the speed at which these things have changed, I think we didn't fully expect. Um, Also, the reasons that this would change, we didn't fully expect, right? So if I rewind to say last summer, and you asked us like, okay, what's going to be one of the biggest use cases on Solana? I don't think anyone of us would have told you it's going to be trading a coin with a picture of a dog with a hat, right? Like these things are just very difficult to forecast. That's actually one of the things that I feel like my time in crypto has taught me
Mm,
is that you never say never, like anything can and will happen.
mm.
And it's very difficult to predict sort of the things that end up working and getting attention in product market fit in crypto.
Mm. Yeah, great point. And I definitely want to talk about meme coins, but before we get there, I really want to talk about Blinks or Solana blockchain links because when I saw that, I had this kind of, I don't know, eureka moment of here's the transition from Web 2 to Web 3 because there's been talks of Web 3, but I'm like, I don't see it yet. Where is it for the end consumer, right? And where my mom and dad can easily utilize it and where I don't necessarily need to know that it's running on blockchain, but it is. So tell us about Blinks and what's the goal there?
Yeah. So there's a long version of the story for Blinks, but I think the shorter version of it is y- in crypto historically, the way you've had to engage with application Web3 is you go to usually some website, usually it's on desktop, and you connect a wallet and then you engage. And so that's a ton of work. What we wanted to do is bring Web3 to where people already are,
Yeah.
which is social media applications, whether it's Twitter, now X, or Discord, or Telegram, or Reddit. Like all of these applications where people are already spending time, one way in which you can sort of embed crypto into these things is through links. All of them support links in some way, shape, or form. And so our sort of observation was like, okay, like let's just bring crypto to where people are already spending time. Um, and we already had actually, for other reasons, built out some of the technology to enable Blinks and to surface transactions through links. And so a lot of the work then was just in having the infrastructure to sort of surface these transactions. That when you're scrolling Twitter, you can actually get a blink, and the blink renders as like this thing that shows you, oh, like donate 1 or 10 or 100 or 1,000 USDC to this cause, or like bet on this prediction market. Um, so, anyways, the thesis here overall was let's just bring crypto to where people are already engaging,
Hmm.
make it fun, make it easy. Um, and the experimentation we've seen with Blink so far has been awesome. And so that's definitely coming true.
So can retailers use Blinks? If they're trying to sell a product or, if it's Amazon or whatever, and it can all, what's the infrastructure being set up and it is for which industries and are you, well, I'll ask the other questions after, but what industries are you targeting?
Yeah. So again, it's pretty broad. Actually, one thing I realized is I didn't maybe properly explain like what a blink is for those in the audience who maybe don't know. So blink is very simple, stands for blockchain link. It's a link that you can post in say Twitter and maybe in the show notes or something. I can send a few examples so people can really see this for themselves.
Mhm.
But it's a link that you post, and then people who see that link will actually see a rendering of some kind of image, maybe with a prompt. And then there'll be buttons in that rendering that let them just take on-chain actions. So one example of this would be this is actually something that someone did. They sold, there's a company called Baxis that sort of sells some valuable goods on chain, mostly sort of booze. They sold some like really vintage Lehman Brothers alcohol,
Wow.
Lehman Brothers, the field bank.
Yeah.
And they did this through Blinks. And so there was a button sort of on the Blinks that let you bid for some of these vintage bottles. And they, I think, few of these things sold for like tens of thousands of dollars, right? And so people were bidding on vintage booze on their Twitter feed just by clicking something, connect, and then signing a transaction through their wallet. So that's what a Blink is. It's a link. You can let people execute any kind of on-chain transaction. In this case, it's selling, bottles of whiskey on chain. But it could be literally anything. It could be deposit, USDC into a pool. It could be stake SOL. It could be bet on a prediction market. All kinds of crazy stuff. Playing some kind of on-chain game. So, anyways, because of that incredibly wide range of things that you can use Blinks for, we actually think that like this is something retailers can use, something core infrastructure projects building on Solana can use. Like really the sky's the limit. And I think imagination is actually the main thing that you need. And I suspect that like the most and best the most sort of most widely used and best use of Blinks we haven't seen yet. And that's because people are still really only beginning to think about designing products with Blinks in mind.
Are you approaching other social platforms and networks like Facebook and so forth about, integrating this technology?
Yeah, well, so one of the interesting thing with Blinks is that part of this you can do without needing to approach the platforms.
Mm.
So the X, Blinks work is not really, we're not working with the X team directly. It actually is more like if they work with some of the wallet teams to do the rendering. The dream, though, is that actually the applications themselves will have first-party wallets that they support, and actually that would make the UX even better. Because today, one limitation with Blinks that we have to acknowledge is that in order to actually execute the transaction and see it, you need to have a wallet already. So like this really only works best for people who already have wallets. The dream is that your X account already has a wallet. You can see the Blinks, and then when you hit the button, there's not even like a wallet pop-up. Like the thing just gets executed because X has wallet support directly. And so, but to your question, like we could do this for Facebook, you could do this for Reddit, you could do this for literally any platform, so long as they allow people to post links and give us some way to render those. And so, I mean, I can think of all sorts of fun things, even things like Kick or Twitch, like these streaming platforms.
Yeah.
In fact, there's already teams on Solana that are experimenting building Blinks for streaming. So yeah, we'd love to see this all over the place. Because ultimately Blinks are just pieces of text, and a lot of social media platforms support posting of that.
Now, you mentioned that USDC is the currency that can be used. Obviously, that's a stable coin. Can you also use the Sol token with this feature?
Absolutely. Yeah. Ultimately, Blinks can support any kind of transaction. So it can be any kind of transaction with any kind of token. I just happen to give an example with USDC. It could be with Sol, it could be with a meme coin, it could be with another stablecoin, PYUSD. It is entirely up to the developer of the Blink, like what is the action they want to take, and what do they want the user to do.
I love it, man. It's like I said, it really caught my attention, and it was kind of like a preview as to integration with Web 2 and I guess transition to Web 3, because like I mentioned earlier, it's kind of clunky. I'm hearing Web 3, but where is it? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, not everyone can just go set up a wallet, the 24 seed phrase and all that jazz. So, but it's really great. I love what you guys are doing with this. Let's talk about the Solana phone. Tell me about this phone, man. I've been hearing a lot of
Yeah.
things, positive, negative, and what the goal is here.
So the goal with the Solana phone is worth mentioning. So the first phone was the Saga, and now the next phone is called the Seeker, which will be released sometime next year. There's sort of an interesting history here, but I think the sort of fundamental driver for the creation of the phone is today most of the people in the world experience the internet through their phones, right? Not through their computers.
Yeah.
And so it's not really an acceptable state of affairs that the UX of interacting with crypto on mobile is so poor. And so really like fundamentally, it's like, okay, let's solve that. And so the goal of the phone is like, okay, give a best in class, make the mobile experience for crypto the sort of first class customer, make that UX really good, and also make it secure. Hence why there's actually a sort of a hardware wallet that is part of these phones. That's really like, I think, the core vision here. There's a sort of another thing that we think is really important, which is giving applications distribution without the 30% tax. And that's why there is what's called sort of the dApp store on the Solana phone. That is really a store in which dApps can be installed. Users can access these things and find them. And you don't have to pay sort of an overlord 30% for doing not a whole lot. So that's really another like important part of the sort of phone vision here. And so those are parts of the original thesis.
Sure.
And then what ended up happening is, people wanted to engage with the buyers of these phones. They airdrop tokens to phone holders.
Mm.
Some of those airdrops, especially, for example, the Bonk airdrop, ended up being worth a ton of money,
Yeah.
more than the phone itself. And that really led to like a bunch of craze that you saw around this time last year, which led to like sort of all of the first generation of Solana phones selling out within a week. And so now the phones also become a little bit of a distribution slash like rewards mechanism. So people who are building things in Web3 want to reach the sort of engaged, probably wealthier than average crypto user base. And they found that the phone user base is like a good way to target those people, because the kind of person who's going to afford what's probably going to be a second phone just for crypto
Sure.
is a good user to target. So yeah, it's sort of interesting to see that the phone is like, there's all these like sort of conceptual reasons why it got created. And then the thing that really had to go viral was the rewards, which
Mm.
is really kind of a classic crypto thing.
So, Colleen, it just clicked for me the purpose of this phone because I do have a secondary phone specifically for crypto.
Yep.
Where I have authenticator codes and a bunch of different things. It stays offline for the most part. So that makes sense because and maybe it's because I didn't dig deeper in understanding the mission, what you guys were trying to do, but now I think it clicked for me. But with that said, I'm curious about the technology you're using for this phone because obviously you have big players in the market like Apple and Samsung and Google. You're not really trying to compete with them. And which technology are you using? Are you using like the Samsung technology and things like that?
Yeah. So the phone's an Android phone. So the operating system, open source, like there are parts of this that like if you don't have to rebuild the wheel, like why do it? So you just use best in class stuff. And that means that all the existing applications that one would use on an Android device, you can use on the Solana phone. It's not like a totally different world. It's something that'll be very comfortable to Android users. And to this point, yeah, there's some differences between iOS and Android, but um, for the most part, you will get everything that you want.
Mm.
So that's sort of at the software level. At the hardware level, this I'll have to go look. So the phone's actually created by a separate organization, not the Solana Foundation, which I'm a part of.
Okay.
But it turns out that like if you want to make an Android device, there are plenty of manufacturers out there who will do it for sort of given specifications. It's actually not that hard to do. So yeah, it's like pretty standard stuff. I think one of the things I'll say about the hardware for this phone is that we're aiming for the phone to be overall cheaper, but for certain parts of the phone to be better, especially I think the camera
Mm.
um, to be sort of better than the original Solana phone, which is already a pretty good camera. So that's a little bit about the mentality here. Is like making phones actually physically is not that hard. They're manufacturers you can work with. And then the special things about this phone really are that there is a embedded wallet. But actually, a lot of the technology for that, the sort of secure elements already exist on other phones.
Yeah, because I remember I have a Samsung and I see the prompt to create like a secure wallet and things like that with digital identity and a bunch of other stuff. I haven't actually set it up because I don't want to do that on my main phone, but
Yeah.
that makes sense. And do you think though, with this phone that you guys are building that is crypto specific, that it might actually do really well in emerging markets and developing countries where people rely so much on smartphones. And then as we're headed to a more digital world and many people are getting more exposure to crypto and they're using USDC and they're holding some Bitcoin and things like that, that this may get some really good market penetration.
Absolutely. So I actually think that's a really kind of forward-looking statement that you just made. Like, there's definitely an argument that the user base of this phone ends up actually being kind of bifurcated in an interesting way. Like, some of it is people who uh, are using this as their second phone, and
Mm.
that's probably like a wealthier audience in sort of developed nations. And then there actually quite possibly maybe a segment, and this to me actually would be more exciting, is the people for whom stablecoins are actually already a big part of their financial lives. And this is like the financial device that lets them best interact with stablecoins. So
Mm.
they're actually like, places like Argentina, Pakistan, Nigeria, in which the population is actually gravitating heavily towards stablecoins because of lack of trust in their sort of native currency, their native government, and the financial rails that exist in the country. And so you're seeing a ton of adoption of stablecoins there.
Mm.
And if we also got to see a bunch of those people then engaging with those stablecoins using the Solana phone, I think that would be an incredible uh, thing to experience and like validation of crypto financial rails as something that's like providing real value to people's lives on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, for sure. Um, I want to talk about DePin projects on Solana. Any that you can highlight or you're excited about?
Yeah, I mean, this one's a little bit tricky. It's like asking someone, who are your favorite children?
Right.
Um, because I've spent a ton of time working with the DePin ecosystem on Solana for about the last year and a half now. Um, I'll talk about a few themes I think that are interesting and some of the sort of example projects from them. Um, One that I think will be a big topic of discussion in the next year is actually energy, deep in energy. This is something that I has started to get a little bit of attention. A few investors have written pieces about this, like Alliance Dow and Andreessen Horowitz. A few examples of projects I think within that sector on Solana that there are new ones to watch. Fuse Energy. They did a Breakpoint talk that I'd recommend people watch if they're interested. There's a team called Star Power that's coming out of Alliance Dow, a team called Sourceful. Anyways, the sort of meta point to make around energy and DePin is that energy infrastructure, I think globally is going to change a lot in the next 10 years because people are realizing that climate change is in fact real and that we need to shift our energy consumption to respond to that. Also, energy consumption is almost certainly going to go up because of data center demand and sort of general consumer demand, electric cars, et cetera. How do we evolve the sort of grid infrastructure to deal with that? There's a bunch of ways to do it, but actually one potentially really powerful way is to have more people install what are called distributed energy resources, things like solar panels or batteries in their home.
Mm.
And the other thing is actually for people to start shifting their energy consumption patterns a little bit, right? Like it's actually meaningfully different to run your dishwasher at 7 p.m. when literally everyone is at home running the AC versus running it at 12 p.m. when no one's at home. And that difference in behavior has a monetary value to your utility provider. And actually, I think teams like Fuse are now basically giving people token incentives to install those energy resources in your home and potentially to get you to incentivize you to change your behavior. Right? Like if it's worth $10 to the utility company for you to maybe change your dishwasher timing, they could give you 5 of those $10 in rewards through the token, and everyone wins. So I think there's actually some really powerful things that tokens can do with respect to energy, and we're going to see a bunch of that next year. That's energy. Another sector, I mean, this one is maybe in some ways like the original DePin sector is like telecommunications technology. So Helium is the sort of mother of DePin and the leader in the space, and just like really showing some real traction. Now being used as sort of carrier offload. So basically, what that means is that when if you're using say T-Mobile or Verizon, and the carrier doesn't have coverage in certain places, but Helium does, actually now they're running experiments where those people are getting automatically routed through Helium. And so I think this is happening for like tens of thousands of people at this point. So that's incredible to see. And then there are teams like Dawn that are taking the DePin playbook and using it not for like cellular mobile coverage, but for Wi-Fi coverage. So yeah, teams like XNet. Anyways, I think the intersection of telecommunications technology and DePin is going to be a big one. Um, CDN infrastructure is probably the other category that's quite interesting. So there are teams like Pipe and Gradient on Solana that are building and Blockcast that are building decentralized CDN networks so that right. So CDN networks is fundamentally about having content cached near where consumers are going to consume it. So Netflix is like a classic example of like if everyone all over the US can watch, some popular Netflix show, you should probably have that Netflix show cached in like near all of the major urban centers so that you don't have to stream all of this data for like 4K video across the US or the world. And so it's fundamentally a distributed technology problem. And we're seeing a few really talented teams tackle it using token incentives. So, anyways, those are just a few. I mean, there's like all kinds of awesome stuff going on in DePin, but I don't think we have forever. So I'll try to keep it short.
No, that's great. And great to hear that, these things are happening on Solana. And on that note, tokenization as well. One news that really caught my eye was Libre, if I'm saying that right. I think, let's see, it's a joint venture between hedge fund Brevan Howard, WebN Group, and financial services giant Nomura's Laser Digital, and it's it was Hamilton Lane Credit Fund, I believe it was. That's
Yep.
tokenized in Solana. Tell us about that, and are you seeing other type of activity like this as well?
Absolutely. I think Hamilton Lane is just like the first of many institutions that are going to tokenize access to funds on Solana. And I think the question people might have is like, why do this? Like you can, the average person usually accesses funds of various sort through like Fidelity or Robinhood or whatever. Like, what's the point of tokenizing funds? And I think there's a few things here that are driving the interest from institutions. So one is actually that there's some like the back office challenges for managing a fund, like what's called fund administration. It's like a very arcane thing. It's a huge pain in the ass, and actually, it's like something that on-chain funds can do much more easily. So there's some just like operational benefits potentially towards having funds where a lot of the fund assets and operations are handled on chain. So that's one, is like some sort of operational benefit.
Mm.
Arguably the bigger thing though is that these funds I think are interested in accessing on-chain wealth. And I think what we're increasingly seeing is that like as sort of, crypto prices go up and the crypto industry matures and grows, an increasing portion of people will have a lot of their wealth not denominated in or not placed in bank accounts or brokerage accounts, but in their wallets.
Mm.
And the easiest thing, and like what people who have wealth on chain want to do is they generally don't want to then bridge it into or off ramp it into the fiat system.
Right.
They want to diversify it and use it productively on chain. And so what these funds, like the Hamilton Lane Fund and others, is like giving people the option to do that, right? So today, if I have assets on chain, it's like, okay, I can have it in stable coins or I can have it in some volatile crypto assets. But if I don't want to have it in either of those things, I actually don't have that many options. But now there are teams that are offering you various sort of real assets on chain. So whether it's teams like Ondo that let you get access to treasuries on chain, or now, Hamilton Lane giving you access to private credit on chain. I think that's a really important thing. And people who have wealth on chain want to diversify, and we're going to see more and more ways for them to do it. And over time, what I would expect actually is then like the overall share of investing done through on-chain funds will increase as more wealth is on chain and as people realize that this is just like a more efficient way to do it.
Yeah, and obviously you got BlackRock leading the charge here. I believe they have the largest tokenized fund. So, as the competition heats up between Solana and Ethereum, are you guys? I know you're focused more on the building side, but are you watching the stats? Are you doing any comparison with what's happening on ETH versus Solana. And obviously Solana has from a transaction speed standpoint and efficiency is a lot better. And there's tons of like layer twos on Ethereum. I don't even know which one to pick. But how are you guys monitoring the competition there?
Yeah, it's um the things that I personally look for, maybe there's two buckets. There's sort of like one thing we care a lot about is monitoring like who is building really amazing end applications for consumers or for enterprises. And I think the thing that I always think about is like, what is the 10x better thing that crypto does for this application? So anytime like we're constantly looking, whether it's on Solana or anywhere in crypto, like what's getting built, what's the 10x better thing that crypto does for the application. And so whether that's on Ethereum or in Cosmos or in some of these upcoming L1s, like to us, it doesn't really matter what chain it's getting built on. What we're always just really interested in is like how are the most talented people innovating?
Mm.
Um, because and the reason we care about that is like we want to make sure that Solana as a network full like basically is able to serve the needs of those builders building that cutting edge stuff, and lets them do it at scale. So that's sort of at the application level. We're just looking for the looking to track like what are the most talented people in crypto doing and what are the 10x better crypto use cases.
Mm.
On the infrastructure level, like the thing that we're looking for is just what are ideas out there to make Solana better, faster, cheaper, while maintaining sort of an important level of security and censorship resistance. I think it used to be that like some of those ideas came from our peers or competitors, whether it's sort of the Ethereum world or others. Increasingly, actually, I think Solana is now in a place where this is like net new stuff. And it's just cutting edge research that has to come from teams that know how to build performance systems. So I actually think that now a lot of it, like Solana will be the thing people look to figure out how do you build a really, really performant network.
Mm. Um, as you're talking about performance, I forgot to include this in the list of topics, but Fire Dancer. Tell us about that and what upgrades or things would that will that make better on the Solana blockchain?
Yeah, so Firedancer are incredibly important things. So for those who don't know, Firedancer is basically the second validator client that's coming to Solana. So fully like independently created validator client. Why is this important? For a few reasons. One is that it makes the network much more robust.
Mm.
So if there's just one piece of software that all the validators are running, if there's a bug in that piece of software, that is like impacts the entire network immediately. If there are now two independently created pieces of software, it's much, much less likely that the same bug exists in both.
Mm.
And so the network now has some robustness and fallback that like, okay, the sort of validators are running one client that has a bug, fine, they may go offline. Network can still function because of the second client. That I think is really important. Something we haven't touched on so far in the conversation is like downtime in Solana's past, which we can talk about if we want. But I think the second validator client is really important for that. The second thing is performance benefits. So the original Solana client, was built over the course of many years, and because we always prioritize moving quickly, like the code base becomes sort of increasingly large and difficult to grapple with in some ways. And so it's really actually the fact that a second team could come in and basically reimagine how could we rewrite the Solana client in a much more performant and straightforward fashion has actually looks like Firedancer just be much more performant, and so the network should just get faster. And I think that's also just a beautiful thing. So you get a bunch of benefits with respect to stability for the network, and looks like a bunch of performance benefits. And that I think is just like really, really good for the network's health overall. One thing that's worth noting, right? Like there are extremely few L1s today that actually have two independent validator clients.
Hmm.
Once Fired Answer is live, it's going to be basically like Solana and Ethereum, and that's it. Um,
When is that slated to go live, by the way?
so there's a version of Fired Answer actually that's already live on mainnet today called Franken and Fired Answer in its sort of totality though will go live some point probably mid next year.
Hmm.
Uh, it's really difficult to give exact timelines because a lot of this will depend on sort of the partial testing, how that goes. Um, and sometimes if we find things that are not working as well as we want them to, then you sort of go back and iterate.
Hmm.
But that's the rough timeline here.
Got it. So you guys are doing incredible things, a lot of adoption, a lot of activity. There has been some criticism though, Solana. You mentioned like the past or downtimes in the past. Although there has been some time since the last situation like that. How are you and the folks and the developers working to address this? And what was causing those downtimes?
Yeah. So I won't get into some of the technical details, but I'll speak to it at a higher level, which is that, you know, fundamentally, actually, for a while, I think that the prioritization from Toli was Anatoly, the sort of person who is the founder and Solana's his brainchild, is like, let's prioritize speed of execution over making sure that like we're like 99.999% confident that everything works perfectly.
Hmm.
Like, especially in the early days of Solana, it just mattered more to iterate quickly and get stuff out and ship fast
Sure.
than to solve for like finding every last thing. And so that was like the intentional approach towards the way we advance the network. Now, over time, as Solana has grown, they're now sort of just like existing large businesses, hundreds of millions of dollars of trading volume, enterprises using Solana. We've had like all like a sort of philosophical cultural shift in that like, okay, great. Like now that Solana is more mature, we need to be a little bit more risk averse. And so now we prioritize making sure that releases are like more robustly checked. Um, than sort of the ship it attitude of the past. So there's like been a little bit of philosophical shift with respect to how the network gets managed. Um, Fired Answer being live will also be a huge step forward for network robustness in general. And so, yeah, the last thing I'll say with respect to downtime is that one thing that I think people don't fully realize is Solana just operates at a different level than every other L1 or really L2 that's live today. And so the kinds of problems that the network has run into in the past, no one else has run into. So we sort of like we learned about it as we ran into these issues. And so that led to downtime in the past, but I think the sort of result of it now is that there is no network that's been battle tested at scale the way Solana has.
Hmm.
Uh, and I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know you guys are handling a lot of traffic, a lot of transactions. So it's kind of par for the course, but obviously you do further iteration. You mentioned the change in the culture and how you guys are fine tuning things. So it makes sense. There's also another criticism, and look, I understand in the crypto industry, different projects throw mud at each other, right?
Yeah.
People have a financial incentive to bash the competition and tar and feather them as much as possible. But there has been talks of Solana centralized, and I saw the other day Edward Snowden of all people said something like that. How would you
Yeah.
address those criticisms?
I'm going to not try to be too dismissive here. I think Solana Centralized is such a huge meme at this point. Like a couple things, right? Like it's important to think about decentralization and censorship resistance. Like practically, like what are you accomplishing with it? So just a couple things, like the way I think about uh, decentralization. One is at the validator level. So at the validator level, right, for Solana, I think we're at something like 1,300 validators. So that seems like okay. That's like a large number. It's distributed across the world: North America, Western Europe, Eastern Europe, North Africa. There's a few in other places as well. Certainly, actually, there's a bunch in Asia as well. So large number of nodes distributed across the world, and because for proof of stake networks, one thing that's actually really important is how distributed is the stake on the network across these nodes. So there's this notion of what's called a super minority coefficient, which is basically for proof of stake networks, the amount of stake to get to 33% of the total stake is like a relevant threshold, because that's if one actor had access to that much stake, then they can start potentially doing nefarious things.
Hmm.
So for Solana, that number is about 19 or 20. So basically 33% of the stake is distributed across the largest 19 or 20 validators. And so that's like a pretty meaningful set. Just to like as a benchmark, Ethereum, last I checked, 30% of stake is across just two entities. It's like Lido and Coinbase.
Hmm.
Now, granted, I think those entities have taken steps to like make sure that they manage their stake appropriately, but just like for the people who think that Solana is very centralized, it's worth acknowledging then that like even networks like Ethereum actually have some pretty meaningful vectors of centralization. Right. And so Solana actually, from that perspective, is like doing quite well. So, anyways, there's sort of like validator and stake centralization is one level of it. I think Solana does exceptionally well here. Then there's also like at the software level. And so this is where FireDancer becomes relevant, which is that Ethereum has a few different clients, which is really great and important. And I think gives Ethereum a degree of decentralization and censorship resistance that no other network has. Once Solana has FireDancer, and then there's people actually who are working on a third and fourth validator client. Once those things are live, like Solana will be basically one of the only two networks aside from Ethereum and Bitcoin that have multiple clients. And so, anyway, I think that the people who accuse Solana of being centralized today, it's coming, I think, largely from like a lack of information or absorbing misinformation. I think it's like an incredibly robust network, actually.
Hmm. Let's talk meme coins. There's
Let's
there's
do
two
it.
there's two layers here, right? One is the amount of meme coins on Solana, but just meme coins in general. Are they good for crypto? And personally, I'm not a big fan of meme coins. And don't get me wrong, there are established meme coins like Doge and so forth, which have shown they have lasting potential. They have a community and developers and so forth. I'm not really a big fan of meme coin that was started last night and then it could be
Yep.
rugged the next week. And obviously I believe in the free market, so I'm not trying to say stop all meme coins and kill them and all that. I don't want that. I don't want that to be the takeaway from this conversation. But what do you guys feel about meme coins from your perspective? And are you doing anything to like watch out for rugs and people getting scammed and so forth?
Yeah. So I don't know if there's a house view on meme coins. I'll give you my personal take.
Hmm.
Um, which is that so maybe it's worth reflecting on like what is like this meme coin trend, like what is it really? And I think a simple way to put it is it's speculation on digital culture. So, right, like humans love to speculate. I mean, that's why the casino business is what it is,
Hmm.
why people punt meme stocks, why sports betting has become such a huge thing in the world. Um, like people want to speculate. So there will always be speculation. And as sort of the world has become more internet native and people spend more of their time online and on social media, culture has also become very digital. And so to me, meme coins are really like you take increasingly digital culture and memes and you add that to this human desire to speculate. And meme coins are like that sort of the result of that, of like digital native culture and speculation that you do through your browser. So in some ways, like it's a very natural thing.
Hmm.
Of course, like is it good or bad? It's sort of like comes down to whether or not you think what we think about speculation and whether people should be allowed to participate in casinos or not.
Hmm.
Um, that I think is like a sort of personal thing. It's worth noting, right? So from a Solana perspective, even if I didn't want meme coins to exist or some set of people don't, like you couldn't stop it. Like it's a sort of open, permissionless network. And so it's going to happen. Um, I think one thing that's worth interesting or like worth talking about is like why did meme coins happen on Solana, right? Like in some ways, meme coins happening is sort of interesting. Why did meme coin happen on Solana? I think is like telling, and my sort of take is that meme coins really took them on Solana in particular because it's just the most fun and accessible place to do stuff.
Hmm.
Like it's super cheap. You have excellent wallet infrastructure. Phantom is just like a great product, or Solar Flare, like whatever. Trading on like trading anything on Solana just feels good. And when I say feels good, what I mean like you click the button, you don't pay basically any money in fees, and it just happens. Like it's that snappy thing that you expect from a consumer experience. So if you're using something like Jupiter to trade meme coins or Pumped Up or whatever, it just feels good at this like very visceral level. And it feels good because Solana is such a performant network, and because we have teams like Jupiter and Radium that have built incredibly performant, efficient financial infrastructure. So you sort of take all of these factors, super performant network, really, really world-class builders and financial infrastructure, and you just have like the ingredients for the meme coin frenzy. So I think that's really interesting. I think the one thing like there's a question of like, okay, how do you do this safely, or in a way that sort of protects people? That one I think is a tough question to answer. I think ultimately, actually, a lot of the controls here will happen at the application level. So, or the wallet level. The wallets already do a bunch of work to basically blacklist certain tokens if they think that this is associated with fraudulent activity.
Oh, sure.
So there is already a bunch going on. And to me, this is a controversial take. Nigel Eckel is one of the founders of FanDuel, and he's also sort of founded a few things on Solana. He sort of made a great point to me a few weeks ago. He's like, the point of the casino, right, is like the job of the casino, rather, in some ways, is like it's not that it's negative EV that you lose money doing it. People know that. Like they know if they play the lottery for the most part, or they're at the casino floor, they're going to lose money. The point of the casino is like to keep people coming back and for it to be fun. And so I think, to me, like insofar as Pumped Up on all these things offer people an experience that like they find fun, it feels like they're participating in digital culture, like, and they don't get rugged in a huge way, like then I tend to think it's fine. If we allow sports betting, I mean, you think about sports betting, right? Like the crazy thing with sports betting is that sports betting apps actually kick off people who make too much money. Like they do not have any pretenses about like what they're there for, which is basically making money on people betting. And so at least with meme coins, like it's much more democratic. Like anyone can participate, no one's kicking you off. And so if you're fine with sports betting, I think it's hard to argue that you should be against meme coins.
Yeah, I agree with you there, and I believe in the free market. And I think maybe, though, in addition to like blacklisting, bad actors and people who've been doing shady stuff, is maybe education, right? Like, hey, if you're gonna do this, just know the risk. I
Yeah.
think the education is and just awareness of, hey, this is what happens here. You can do it. You're an adult, right? Do whatever you want, but just know the risk. I think that's the important part.
Yeah, there should be a huge disclaimer when you're on Pumped Up Fun or something that's like, yes, I know I'm trading dog coins with no fundamental value, but I want to do it anyways. And people have to hit yes to that.
Yeah, I mean it's an incredible phenomenon because it even went into the political world where you have Bowden and Trump and well, I don't know what else, but
Yeah.
to your point, humans we love speculation and throughout history you've seen it. So it's just fascinating on one level, but also super risky. It goes out on the risk curve for sure. Um, okay,
Yeah.
what's on your roadmap for the remainder of 2024 and maybe into early 2025?
So I think fundamentally we're probably like Solana ecosystem, maybe more than any other ecosystem, is like very laser focused on end applications for people that give them value. And so like there's all kinds of applications I think that are high potential. I would say my like top two categories are probably DePin and payments and applications tied to stablecoins. I
Hmm.
think those are the things that like have the clearest non-speculative product market fit in say like the next 6 to 12 month time frame. Um, and so I expect to see a ton of action there. Um, there's a sort of next level of things that we're excited about that are more like traditional consumer apps, things like Web3 games. Web3 games actually is a sort of another topic. A lot of people are quite have been quite bearish about it.
Hmm.
Um, I'm more optimistic, but that's a longer conversation. Um, there's a lot to be done, I think, at the intersection of the creator economy and social media and crypto. Um, we've seen some experiments like Friend Tech, but I think those are sort of fundamentally flawed. I think the creator coin model is broken if
Hmm.
the creator payouts are tied to speculation around the coin and volatility rather than like continued creator output. Anyways, I think there's a whole bunch of consumer applications, and the sort of trend of more assets being tokenized will continue over the like next few years, but I think that's a longer time horizon. So yeah, I think DePin and payments slash stablecoins, and then a whole bunch of other applications in the longer term. So that's at the application level.
Hmm.
And then what we're always trying to figure out is like, okay, for these applications, uh, how do you make Solana better for them? And so it's all about like getting feedback from the builders, the products that they're trying to build, the challenges that they run into, and then how do we make sure that Solana addresses those challenges? Like one of my sort of rough rules is that okay, if one team complains to me about something on Solana, that's interesting. If five teams complain to me about the same thing, okay, like that's something we should go fix. So in some ways, like our roadmap at the protocol level is like quite dependent on what do people want. Like we're pragmatic people. It's like we want to solve problems, and so what we're looking for is like what are the problems that builders are running into.
Hmm. Any thought on web monetization, given that Solana has the speed, right, which can help facilitate a lot of transactions, microtransactions, and so forth.
Yeah.
You know, the folks at Brave are kind of doing this, right, with disrupting the publisher advertiser model. But it seems like you guys can do this, especially with Blinks and these things where you're looking to integrate into Web 2. Any, I don't know if you can tell me, but you know, are you guys looking into web monetization?
Yeah. Oh, so this one's um a longer topic because I think it's like very use case specific.
Sure.
I do think though that Solana is probably a more efficient way to do a lot of financial activity. Um, and we're like only in the early innings of actually seeing that happen. So like one rough example. So like today, if you're on a streaming platform like Twitch,
Hmm.
uh, let's say I want to donate $10 to like some, game streamer on Twitch that I really like. Like I forget what the exact math here is, but something on the order of like 50% of the money instantly disappears because like basically of the $10 I donate, five goes back to the creator.
Hmm.
Of the remaining five, some of it goes to Twitch, and then some of it goes to like the various intermediaries who are facilitating these payments. What I think Solana gives the opportunity for with something like Blinks is that I donate $10, uh, maybe seven goes to the creator, so they went from five to seven. Twitch can keep its cut because they're ultimately the platform that's making all this possible, so they deserve to be paid.
Yeah.
And they should get paid more probably than they do today. But every other middleman in that process should just go to zero because they should just be like the fraction of a cent Solana transaction cost that is there. So like I see sort of a win-win for the platform and the content creator. So that's a sort of Twitch example, but I
Hmm.
think you can apply that to basically any other monetization channel.
Yeah,
I was like,
YouTube.
how do you make this much more efficient? And like give the people who are really most directly providing the value more money and then zero everyone else out.
Yeah, and I can't wait for that as a content creator myself, whether it's the Spotify, Apple Podcast ads, or YouTube. They take a big cut, of course, I think
Yeah.
50% or more than 50. And yeah, I wouldn't mind getting paid in some USDC and getting a larger cut of that. So
Let's see. I mean, we're really trying to make that a reality. Um, so hopefully, you know, coming soon.
well, if you're looking for some beta and alpha testers, don't forget me, please. I would love to test it out.
Oh yeah. Oh, we do. We may very well take you up on this actually. Yeah. This is something
Awesome.
we think about a lot.
Yeah, yeah. And that's something, obviously close to me. But I know, like I said, the folks at Brave are trying to do it, but it's been hard to actually transition from Google Chrome and so forth to use the Brave browser just because of plugins and different things. So to have what you guys are doing, taking the Web3 technology, plugging it, integrating it into Web2, I think might be the way to go until maybe, you know, I don't know, people have become more aware of this technology and then there's a full transition. But right now, there's people still use a lot of Web2 technology. So um, anyway,
Yeah. Uh, I have tried switching off Chrome as well in the past, both to Brave and to DuckDuckGo. And both times actually I just went back to Chrome. I was like, I'm just like too locked in.
yeah,
Yeah,
same.
it's tough.
Yeah. All right, Colleen, I got some wrap-up questions here for you. First, if you
We'll
could
do it.
create your own metaverse, what would the theme be?
Theme probably be. I feel like if you ask someone this question, probably a lot of them will harken back to like something that they loved when they were kids or teenagers. So that's like sort of formative period. So for me, it's probably it's probably like something WoW themed. Like I just like was so taken with the world that Blizzard created for World of Warcraft and that line of games. That has like a special spot in my heart. So probably that.
Nice. Rapid fire questions. Favorite food?
I was just in Singapore and it reminded me of this Chinese chicken rice served in like from a hawker center in paper. It's amazing.
Favorite musician or band?
This one's tough. I probably lately I've been listening to a ton of Black Keys.
Hmm. Favorite movie?
The Matrix. This is such a crypto answer to give,
Yeah.
but I have to say it. I just love that movie so much.
I mean, it's a great movie. It can't
Yeah.
go wrong with it. But yeah, a lot of crypto people like The Matrix.
I'll give a more recent answer on top of The Matrix, which is the movie American Fiction. I thought that was like really, really good, absolutely hilarious, very topical in this day and age. Worth a watch.
Hmm. Favorite book?
This one's reading is like my main hobby, so this one's tough. I'll say 4,000 Weeks.
Hmm.
I normally like really dislike kind of like self-help, self-improvement, time management type books, but this book actually changed the way I live. Really, it's like my most gifted book to friends and stuff. 4,000, but I think the author's name is Oliver Berkman.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, phenomenal.
And when you're not working at the Solana Foundation, what are you doing for fun?
Well, there's this guy, so I'm trying to have fun with him, Peanut, my dog. But as I was mentioning earlier, reading and writing is actually like the hobby that I like find a ton of meaning in, and so whenever I'm not working, I really try to spend more time reading and writing.
Colleen, pleasure chatting with you. Really excited for the future updates around Solana. You guys are doing some really great things, and I would love to have you back on as new developments occur. But thank you so much for joining me.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Hopefully, by the time we have this conversation next, people will be able to donate using Blinks through the channel.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll have to do it in person.
Yes, most definitely.